a great turnout. I know a lot of you, so thanks for taking the time to join us for what I hope will be a really informative and helpful webinar. So again, my name is Gwendolyn Wired, and I'm the Senior Director of Regulatory and Technical Affairs with OTA, and with me is my rock star colleague, Nate Lewis, who serves as OTA's Senior Crops and Livestock Specialist.
Hello all. Thanks, Gwen.
Okay, so just so we know that, where we're going today, I want to start off with a brief overview of the National Organic Standards Board and the national list, and explain the sunset review process. And then with that background, we'll talk briefly about the sunset materials that are under review by NOSB. And then we'll take everybody through a tutorial for using the online sunset survey system that we've created for providing feedback on those sunset materials. We'll end then with some helpful information on navigating OTA's website and submitting comments directly to NOSB. As Kelly mentioned, we're not going to have a great deal of time for Q&As. We want to get information out to you all so folks can get rolling, but Nate and I will be available all next week for NOSB engagement and member engagement. So please reach out to us with any questions that you might have. Okay, so I'll start by laying the foundation for the sunset topics that we're going to be covering today, just to make sure that we're all operating in the same universe. I think that a lot of you know this background, but for those of you that don't, I think this will really help the conversation today. So like most of you know, the USDA National Organic Program is responsible for administering and enforcing the organic regulations. And like all regulations, they developed from a law. And in our case, it was the Organic Foods Production Act of 1990, known as OSPA. So OSPA granted the Secretary the authority to establish the National Organic Standards Board, as we most commonly refer to as NOSB. NOSB is a federal advisory committee appointed by the Secretary of Agriculture, and they advise on which production and handling inputs should be allowed or prohibited in organic farming and processing, based on criteria that's set forth in the Organic Foods Production Act. So we'll talk more about the criteria as we go through the presentation. And I also want to say that the NOSB also advises the Secretary on other aspects of implementing the organic standards. But for our purposes today, we're going to focus on NOSB's role as the gatekeeper of the national list. Okay, so the national list is divided into allowed and prohibited inputs for crops, livestock, and handling. So when we're talking about crop inputs, and you'll hear us interchangeably use the term inputs or substances or materials, we're really talking about the same thing. Those are just terms that we use interchangeably. In the regulations, they use the word substances. Nate and I like to use the word inputs because we think that people can relate to a crop input or a livestock input better than a substance. So when we're talking about a crop input, we're talking about allowed or prohibited pesticides, fertilizers, sanitizers, or other production aids that are allowed or prohibited in crop production under the organic regulations. For livestock, we're talking about medical treatments, feed supplements, vitamins, sanitizers, disinfectants. And for handling, we're talking about minor ingredients or processing aids, including sanitizers or boiler additives that are allowed in or on that 5% of or the 30% non-organic portion that's allowed in either an organic or a made-with product. So in general, the general rule for crop and livestock inputs, that certified farmers are allowed to use non-synthetic or natural production inputs for fertility and pest management. There are some allowances for synthetic substances, provided that they've undergone NOSB review, they meet off the criteria, and they've been voted onto the national list. The same is generally true for handlers, except for organic products. There's a closed list for all of the natural and synthetic substances. Certified organic products, for example, they allow 5% non-organic ingredients or processing aids, provided they have been reviewed by NOSB, they meet off the criteria, and they're voted onto the national list. So one thing that we really want to emphasize today is that the listing of a material, whether it be allowed or prohibited on the national list, is only part of the story. The national list is essentially, it's a license where you may use the material, but then there's the rest of the story, which is getting that material approved in the Organic Systems Plan and having it approved by your certifier. So I'm going to drill further into that concept in a few slides, so just stay tuned. Okay, so the sunset review then, we have the national list, and the organic law requires that this list be reviewed every 5 years by NOSB and renewed by the Secretary, or they'll come off the national list and they would no longer be allowed for use. So when we reference sunset, that's what we're talking about in a nutshell. The sunset review process, it revisits the OSPA criteria for allowance through a public process that ensures that the inputs or ingredients are safe to the environment, safe for human health, and that there's no natural or organic alternatives. So for crop production, livestock production, they're absolutely necessary or they're essential for organic processing. NOP recently revised its sunset policy. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard about this. I want to take a minute just to quickly describe the 3 key changes that the revised policy implements. Number one, it takes a decisive vote of 2/3 of the board to pass a recommendation, and that's in the law. The NOSB is comprised of 15 members, so it takes 10 votes to pass a recommendation. So it takes 10 yeses to get a material onto the national list. The revised policy clarifies that it also takes a 2/3 vote to remove a material from the national list. So it sets up an equal situation where it's 2/3 on and it's 2/3 off. The second part is that NOSB, during the sunset process, they have to vote either straight up or straight on or off the national list. Annotations cannot be changed during the sunset process. Annotations are the restrictions or certain allowances that you'll see attached to a listing. For example, copper sulfate, it's allowed for plant disease control, but it must be used in a manner that minimizes accumulation of copper in the soil. So that's an annotation that puts an additional restriction on that listing of copper sulfate. Historically, NOSB has been able to make revisions, changes to annotations during the sunset review. The policy now is that they cannot make any changes to those annotations. It's simply a vote for it to stay on or for it to come off the national list. And then the third part is that there's 2 opportunities now for public comment. The first is comment to a discussion, and the second is prior to the vote. So it's over the course of 2 meetings where NOSB first puts out a request for public comment on a report on the materials that they're reviewing. For example, for the 2017 materials, they'll be discussing those materials at the April meeting, so there's an open comment period right now. However, they'll be voting on those materials at the fall 2015 meeting. There'll also be a public comment period open prior to the fall meeting. And I'll touch a bit more on this at the end of the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to move really quickly just through some infographics that we created in order to help describe the national list and really to try to provide a perspective on what it is and how it's changed over the years. I want to make sure everybody is aware of this story and aware of our infographics, because I think they can be very helpful as you craft your comments to NOSB and really in any conversations that you're having with others that are trying to understand the issues and trying to understand the national list. So this slide here, know your national list, a historical view of the national list. There's certainly a lot more that went into all of this. This is quite a summary, but from the early 90s through 2000, the national list was compiled through a public process, and it mirrored most of the private and state standards in terms of the materials that were added to the national list. It mirrored most of the private and state standards that were in place prior to the implementation of the National Organic Program, which was 2002. It was assembled to be flexible enough to accommodate a wide range of products and a wide range of operations. And as we moved through the first 3 years of the standard, from 2002 to 2005, we went through what we call a real fine-tuning process where additional materials were added that were necessary but overlooked, or simply they didn't make the first cut, if you will, due to time and resources of bringing the regulation into fruition. And in many cases, these additions included cleaners and disinfectants that were overlooked that were needed for food safety purposes. In 2007, this is a big year, the list underwent a major revision to restrict a number of non-organic ingredients, non-organic agricultural ingredients that could be used in organic processed foods in the 5%. It turned an open list into a closed list that can only be used if organic alternatives do not exist. So while we saw 38 ingredients added to the national list, the addition was in fact a restriction that eliminated hundreds of ingredients that could potentially be allowed. So they had to be on the national list, and then you had to also still have to demonstrate to your certifier that there isn't an organic form commercially available. So since 2008, if we look at all of the activity that's happened since then in terms of petitions and sunset reviews, there's been an evident shift away from additions to the national list, with just 5 added, while 45 have been removed, denied, or further restricted. So we seem to be getting to a place where we have a list that works, and we're finding ourselves at a no-growth trend. So this, just to put a visual to it, in terms of a no-growth trend, there's 5 synthetics that have been added, while 45 have been removed, denied, or further restricted. And there is a strong preference for the use and development of non-synthetic and organic alternatives. And so this is really key, because this preference, coupled with the sunset review, is really important to our participation in this process and understanding what we're doing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. This is another visual here. This is focusing only on synthetics. It breaks down the number of synthetics on the national list since 2002, broken into crops, livestock, and processing. You can see the breakdown. Now we have 60 in crops, 41 in livestock, and 46 in processing. We've had 13 added in crops, while we've had 24 synthetics that have been, 2 that have been removed, or 22 that have been petitioned and denied. You can see the petitioned and denied numbers are quite high, and that is really indicative of this no-growth trend that we're looking at. And this one, I really appreciate this infographic, and it's with respect to handling materials, and Nate and I are working on creating one for crops and livestock as well. But this is a perspective slide that demonstrates the number of minor ingredients and processing aids that are allowed in organic processing as compared to the 3,000 plus that are allowed in conventional food. And that 3,000 is only a partial list. That's what's listed under what we refer to as the everything added to food in the United States. So all this is to say is that, relatively speaking, the national list is relatively a short list of allowed inputs. They've been put in place because they're either necessary for organic production or essential to organic processing. All right, so what does that mean in application, and how does this actually apply to the farmer or to the handler with respect to the sunset review? All right, so the national list can be viewed as the farmer's toolbox. He or she has, as I mentioned, a relatively short list of tools that can be used, and these tools are widely recognized as safe, and they're traditionally used in organic production. They're on the national list because they're necessary and there are no alternatives. So the sunset review process was designed to keep the list honest, so to speak. And even when you have a material on the national list, it doesn't mean that it can simply be used. The regulations require that cultural and biological and mechanical practices be the foundation to the organic system, and It's only when these fundamental practices are insufficient that the materials on the national list may be used. So they must be approved for use by the certifier and justified, and that's something that's looked at during the inspection process. So, again, the sunset process is asking the question: Are they still needed? This is what we're looking at. And I'm going to pause there, Nate, if you have anything that you want to add here. And really, as we go along, I'll pause a little bit longer so you can jump in if I'm forgetting any important points here.
No, I think you covered it just well. Thanks, Gwen.
Okay, and then we have the handler's pantry. Again, the materials on the handling list, they're widely recognized as safe, traditionally used in organic handling. Sunset review ensures that these allowed exceptions are essential. It's a review to find out whether any natural or organic alternatives have developed. Are they still needed? Okay, so that's a really quick run-through of the National Organic Standards Board, of the national list. But again, I wanted to put this perspective out there that we have this list, and our job right now, the National Organic Standards Board, is reviewing the large majority of the materials that are on the national list right now. And so with the number that they're looking at, which is roughly about 200, you can be absolutely assured that if you are an organic farmer, if you're an organic livestock operator, if you're making an organic processed product, if you're selling an organic processed product, that your business will be impacted. And it's really important that everybody gets involved and weighs in on this process. So with that, I'm going to hand the controls over to Nate, and Nate's going to take us through a quick overview of the crop materials, the 2016 and 2017 sunset materials that are up for review. It's going to be really quick, just to make sure everybody has these materials on their radar. We have a lot of summary documents that we've put in place that all of you can look at, and if you haven't seen them going out in any of our blasts, I'll be happy to get them to you directly. That will have all the details that we don't have time to get into today. So with that, Nate, are your controls working? Are you?
We'll see here.
It's always fun to navigate in cyberland. Sorry for the delay. This is where I sing a little song. Oh, good. You're saved.
Yep. Okay, great. So first I'll just run through the 2016 sunset materials for crops. And just to remind folks, these are the substances that were had their first round of public comment last fall at the meeting in Louisville, Kentucky, and the board will be voting on this spring. So this, again, just to reinforce the 2 rounds of comment. So NOSB has already heard about these from the public. I expect them to hear about from stakeholders again this spring. But what we have for these 2 materials, ferric phosphate, which the grower community generally refers to as Sluggo in its name brand, is a snail and slug bait. The second material is hydrogen chloride, which is used for the delinting of cotton seeds prior to planting. And what we have for the upcoming meeting is subcommittee recommendations on both these materials. And at least at the subcommittee level, the board appears as though the vote is to renew these substances, and they would remain on the national list for use in organic crop production. So again, encourage folks to weigh in on those materials for the spring meeting to continue the comment process. For the 27 sunset, which at this spring meeting will be the first round of comments, there's over 40 inputs, or right around 40 inputs used in organic crop production that are up for sunset review. They're asking for specific feedback on a lot of these things. For pest control, I'm just going to give a quick example because we want to move through it pretty quickly, and we have the details much more defined in our summary documents. But they're asking a lot of questions about pest control materials. For example, with lime sulfur, the NOSB wants to get grower feedback on how the removal of oxytetracycline and streptomycin have impacted the use of lime sulfur in operations. Similarly, for fertilizers and soil amendments, they're asking whether or not the annotation on micronutrients is still appropriate for today's production systems. So really encourage people to take a look at our summaries so that when you are looking at the materials up for sunset review, you know exactly what NOSB is particularly interested in hearing about. And I'll note too that we've modified each of the sunset surveys, which we'll get into the details of later, to incorporate those specific requests from NOSB. On the livestock side of production, similar amount of inputs are going to be reviewed at this meeting. This is again the first round of discussion. The NOSB is looking for specific feedback on a lot of the materials. Again, healthcare treatments. I'm just putting up some examples, some top-line examples of products I'm aware are used quite frequently on organic livestock farms. And just to give an example, on the parasiticides listing, the NOSB requests feedback on whether or not all three synthetic parasiticides are still allowed, that should remain allowed, and whether or not they're all still being used. And I'm just providing that as an example of one of those clarifying questions. They're also asking about APCO-approved vitamins and minerals, and have some specific questions about the vitamins that are used in organic livestock rations. I think that's a critical place for the grower community and for feed handlers to weigh in. And again, we have a summary on all the livestock materials that are up for review that have the specific information requested by NOSB. Gwen, you want to talk a little bit about the specific handling substances that are up in the next meeting? Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. All right. So as Nate mentioned, the 2016 sunset materials, it's a very short list for crops and livestock, or actually there isn't any for livestock, but short list of 2 for crops. But for sunset, we're dealing with 10. And they have already taken a round of comments on these materials, so they have their proposals out that are open for comments. And so I've divided these up here as to the substances that they have voted, the subcommittee has voted for renewal. And just as a reminder, the votes that are coming out right now are from the subcommittee level. So this is from the handling subcommittee. And what takes place at the NOSB meeting is the full board convenes, and they have a full board vote. And so it's that full board vote that decides whether or not a material stays on the national list or whether it comes off the national list, provided that it's approved by NOP as well from the Secretary. So for the subcommittee vote, the renewals, egg white lysozyme, microorganisms, and I'll talk a little bit more about microorganisms because that's one listing that they're test driving for their ancillary substance review, which you're probably wondering what in the heck is an ancillary substance review. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Activated charcoal, peracetic acid, L-malic acid, and sodium acid pyrophosphate. The vote subcommittee level is to renew. The subcommittee vote for removal. There are 3 boiler additives that are on the national list. These are restricted boiler additives that can only be used in bottling production. And then there's the tetrasodium pyrophosphate that's on the national list for use as a meat analog. So they are requesting public comment. They want to know whether or not the removal of any of these materials is going to have a major negative impact on your operation. So it's really important to weigh in on those materials. Next slide, Nate. Let me just keep the controls here. Let me go back.
Apologies.
There you go. Thanks. All right. Okay, so for 2017, there's many that they're looking at and that they have flagged with specific questions. I've simply put these ones up on the screen because There are ones that they have specifically stated that they're considering for removal. So again, the 2017 materials, they're not voting on these materials, but they've put out a general report, and they've also provided just their preliminary thinking. So they've stated that they're considering removal for sodium citrate and magnesium carbonate. Sodium citrate is one that came in with the large majority when the rule was implemented. There wasn't a petition for sodium citrate. They're considering removal based on the availability of alternatives, namely citric acid and potassium citrate, that are both on the national list. Sodium citrate is used as an emulsifier in dairy products such as cheese and evaporated milk, and it's also a buffer to control acidity in carbonated beverages. Magnesium carbonate, this is used as an anti-caking agent. It's one that is allowed only in made-with products. That's the annotation on its listing. I see it most commonly used as an anti-caking agent in free-flowing salts. So if you're using a salt in a product and you're making a made-with product, certifiers are looking to see if there's any anti-caking agents or additives used in that salt. So that's one to pay attention to. For the 606, 205, 606, so these are the non-organic agricultural ingredients that are allowed in organic products, provided that there is not an organic alternative that's commercially available. Again, they've flagged many with specific questions. Their specific questions generally are asking if there are any alternatives, if there has been an increase in the organic production of the listed material since it went on to the national list. They've flagged chia, dillweed oil, galangal, lemongrass, orange pulp, dried, and chipotle peppers as ones that they are considering removal. I have, just as I see the communications starting to air out there, I do recognize that there's a real push for removing as many materials from 205, 606, the allowed agriculturals, from the national list. So, you know, good or bad, right or wrong, the point here is to just take a close look at your formulations and know if you're using any of the 205, 606, and not just the ones I have listed on the screen. This is where our summaries are really important. You can go in and at a quick glance, you can see what they're considering. We've taken a 256-page packet that NOSB put out, and we've turned it into a 6-page summary, and then we also have additional summary documents where we have consolidated all of the specific questions that NOSB is asking for crops, livestock, and handling. So the comment period is short. The amount of time that we have to be able to evaluate, you know, close to 200 materials is practically an impossible task. So we've really tried to put together documents and to create a system that will help facilitate a really efficient and meaningful comment process. Nate, next slide, please. Ancillary substances, I'm not going to get into the details here as well, but up here on the screen you'll see all of the substances on the national list. This is all parts of the handling list, so the allowed non-agriculturals as well as the allowed agriculturals, where they are evaluating the ancillary substances. So the ancillary substances are added during the manufacturing of these substances on the national list. They're not added by you, the certified operator that's using them, but the manufacturer will add ancillary substances. They are substrates or stabilizers or preservatives that help the ingredient. They don't end up on the ingredient statement of the final certified organic product, but they do get listed on the specification sheet that would accompany the ingredient that you're purchasing. So they remain in the ingredient, so they would actually be an ingredient within the dairy culture you're purchasing. Again, you would see them on the specification sheet, specifically in the ingredient listing. So NOSB is requesting that folks come forward and with specification sheets that they let NOSB know which ancillary substances are being included. And the real kicker here is that the way the policy works is that if the ancillary substance is reviewed and approved by NOSB, it can be used. But if it's not on the list, if they haven't reviewed it and they haven't approved it, it can't be used. You'll find in their documents, as well as our summaries, they've put together a chart so far for dairy cultures, enzymes, yeast, microorganisms, and I believe tocopherols. So you can see which ones they've identified so far that they've pulled from the technical reports that have been created for a number of materials. But they're asking for more. So I think it's really important that we do our homework and get those to NOSB so they can be part of the review. All right. So I think with that, why don't we go ahead and move into the surveys, Nate, if you want to take it from here.
Sure. Great. Well, I think that hopefully by now we've established the urgency and importance of getting public feedback on these sunset materials, as well as all the other proposals that National Organic Standards Board will be evaluating and discussing at the upcoming meeting. And in order to help streamline that process, we put together a survey system for producers and handlers to weigh in on each substance that is up for sunset review. And while we don't want this to necessarily discourage folks from submitting their own individual written comments to NOSB, which can be tremendously helpful, this is a way to reduce the burden of the comment process and get your thoughts into the system and to NOSB with a little bit less work involved. So this is a snapshot of our Sunset Survey webpage, and you can see the link down at the bottom. You can actually Google OTA 2017 Sunset, and it'll bring you right there. So it's easily accessed, and from here we'll go into what each, or at least what the 27 Sunset feedback survey page and how it's been structured. So just to give everyone a preview of this. When you get to the 27 Sunset page, you'll find a panel here to select what type of input you're wanting to learn more about and provide feedback on. So if you're a crop producer, you would click on the crop inputs button. So you select your survey type. From there, a drop-down will come down, and it'll further delineate what substances are up for sunset review. They're divided up into their categories that are on the national list: algicides, disinfectants and sanitizers, crop fertilizers, both plant and soil amendments, crop pest, weed, and disease controls, and then crop management and production aids. So from here, you click what group of materials you're interested in looking at, and a third drop-down list will come down. So if you've selected crop fertilizers, you'll see the list of specific substances up for review, and you select which material you're interested in weighing in on. When you click on that link, let's say humic acid, it'll bring you to a new survey. It'll bring you to that specific material survey, which will open in the new window, and that allows you to navigate back to the OTA page easily to comment on additional substances if you are so inclined. A quick look at what these surveys look like. This is the one for ferric phosphate or sluggo, which is going to be voted on at the next meeting. We try to keep these surveys short and sweet, so we're not taking up too much time, but we're still trying to collect the relevant information. So you can see questions 1, 2, and 3 kind of give some general orientation about your operation, what types of crops are grown, how many acres, and region. Then we ask a question about the frequency of use of the particular substance. The question regarding allowed alternatives is one of the most critical pieces to provide feedback on. Organic materials allowed in organic crop and livestock production. One of their requirements is that there are no natural alternatives available, no natural effective alternatives available. So we think that that's a particularly important part of the survey to respond to and give growers' own experiences with use of alternatives and whether or not they were effective. We then ask some questions about the effects to your operations if you're no longer allowed to use it, and we ask you to rate the essentiality of the particular substance for your operation. If the NOSB has requested additional specific information on each substance, those questions are down below the essentiality question at the bottom here, and you'll see that on some of the surveys as you go in to complete them. On handling, Gwen, you want to run through the handling substance example
ahead,
here?
Just another example. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is just another example on to look at handling substances, just to get a sense of how it's oriented or how it's organized. If you were to click on the handling substance button, a drop-down would come down, and it is divided up into 605A, which are the non-synthetic, non-agricultural ingredients, 605B, the synthetic ones, and then 606, the non-organic agricultural ingredients allowed in organic and made with products. If you clicking on the 605A category brings you down to the various types of ingredients that are up for sunset review, and similar to the crops or livestock section, you would each of these is a link to the specific survey for that substance. And again, they'll open up in another window, so it's easy to navigate back to keep weighing. And when you get to the handling sunset surveys, will be a little bit slightly different, simply just because the evaluation criteria for handling substances is slightly different than for crop and livestock materials, and the use patterns are generally fairly different because we're moving from production into handling. But the key information to be providing in on these ones are found in questions 6 and 7, which is about the availability of allowed alternatives and whether or not they work for your operation or for your particular product. If you have conducted research trials on these alternatives, information on the efficacy is greatly appreciated by NOSB as they try to evaluate each substance.
And I'll just jump in here and note, okay. If you want to go stay there, I didn't mark it as key info, but you will find on the surveys as well a box for ancillary substances. So this is a great way, if you can imagine, if this is all working perfectly, we have these surveys are available to everyone. They're not available just to OTA members. We're working with certifiers to try to get these out to every single certificate holder in the United States. So if everybody is weighing in, we'll have consolidated responses. If everybody is weighing in and putting in their ancillary substances, gives me an opportunity to go through and consolidate all of the ancillary substances for dairy cultures, for example, and submit that to NOSB. So there's a strength in numbers here, and as Nate mentioned, this is a really efficient way to go about this. And what you don't see on the screen here, there's a final question, though, that asks whether or not you're submitting comments directly to NOSB, and we offer our assistance in doing that. So again, we're really certainly encouraging that everybody submit comments directly as well. But at very least, I think these surveys will give us groupings and numbers to be able to provide to NOSB. All right, well, let's keep moving on then. Nate mentioned that it's really easy to access the surveys, and you have the link to the surveys if for some reason you find yourself going into the website and looking for them on our website. You can access them by going into what OTA does. If you pull down, you'll see public policy, and then if you move over that, it brings down this next menu where you can go into organic standards. And that will then bring down this next menu where you see allowed and prohibited inputs. And that will take you then to the feedback surveys that you can click on. You can find also, if you click on the National Organic Standards Board, there'll be a link, a button for the Spring 2015 meeting. That's also where you can find all of the summary materials, as well as all of the other materials that NOSB has put together for the meeting. So if you haven't received the the NOSB report news flashes that we've sent out, or the emails that I've been sending out on government affairs. You can get all this information on our website. All right, next slide. This is just a quick look at the NOSB report that we've been sending out. You can see with the quick links that we have at the top. If you're receiving that, it should be in your inbox. And so with those quick links, again, you can go in and you see the READ OTA summary. That focus, it's changed a little bit in that it drops down into the crop, livestock, and handling. The targeted materials, that's where we've consolidated all of the additional information that NOSB is requesting on crop, livestock, and handling materials. And then all the complete subcommittee proposals are also available. Uh-oh.
Not sure what happened, but we'll get back there. Just 1 second.
Recovery is everything, as I like to say. Yeah, we're doing okay. We're just about done here too. We have some time for some questions. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. All right, perfect. So not to sound like a broken record, but I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that NOSB hear from organic producers and handlers. There are very few comments that are received from organic producers and handlers. This is unfortunate because these are the folks that are out there in the field using the materials on the national list. They're the ones that have the firsthand experience and can really speak to the necessity or the essentiality of the materials on the national list. Some NOSB members do make decisions on the number of comments that are received. So while one would like to think that decisions would be made on the quality of comments, there are some that will base decisions on the number of comments. And so that's where if you have 5,000 comments coming in on a petition versus 3 or 4 comments that are well written that are coming in from an organic farmer, the scales can be a little tough to deal with there. So this is where we're hoping that the Sunset Surveys can provide a very efficient and effective way for a lot of organic producers and handlers to individually weigh in with comments. Again, NOSB needs to know why the input is necessary. Are there alternatives? Should the input sunset? Should it stay on the national list? Should it come off the national list? And how would the loss of the input impact your operation? 30-day comment period, it was actually cut short. The proposals were not posted until Thursday afternoon versus Monday of last week. So we are running short on time. The deadline is Tuesday, April 7th at midnight Eastern. We're trying to, Nate and I are working seriously to get our draft comments posted by the 30th, which is a Monday. That will give members a week to review. I know that's not much time, but we don't have much time to write them either. So we're really doing the best we can, and that's where if you have just 5 minutes in your day to call up either of us and provide some feedback on what you're thinking on these materials. We can't write our comments in a vacuum. The comments that we write reflect our members. So really, really important that you reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Next slide, please, Nate. Thank you for hanging on to controls. All right, so submitting comments to NOSB, this is done through regulations.gov. We have instruction documents that take you to walk through 1, 2, 3 that you can follow. Regulations.gov, if you haven't ever used it before, it can be a little mysterious. So you'll see in our instruction document when you first go in, you want to put in this keyword of AMS NOP 15002 and hit the search button, and that will bring you into the notice of the National Organic Standards Board, and then there's a comment button that you click on. And then from there you'll upload. You have an opportunity to upload a document, or you can type your comments directly into a comment field, and there's instructions that you can follow once you're on regulations.gov. But there are some sections that are a little counterintuitive. So we've provided an instruction sheet on this as well, and you can find that at this link here at the bottom of the slide. Book your tickets today. It's an exciting event. If you've never attended an NOSB meeting, I really, really encourage you to do so. The meetings, they move around the United States, so maybe you're on the East Coast and you simply just don't have it in your schedule to be able to make it out to La Jolla, California. But the NOSB meeting is going to be taking place April 27th through April 30th. It's a 4-day meeting starting on Monday and ending on Thursday. And like I mentioned before, this is where the full board, as well as National Organic Program staff and the public all come together. This is where the entire board discusses the issues and they vote on proposals. There's certainly more on the agenda than just the sunset materials, if you can believe it. They're going to have time to discuss and vote on several other proposals as well, and all of that's outlined and summarized in the NOSB reports that we're sending out. But sign up for comments in person. I am absolutely serious when I say that we have seen a single person up at the podium completely turn around the vote of the majority of the board, just simply by standing up there with very, very compelling comments, regardless of all the written comments that have been submitted. So it's really important that you not only submit comments in writing, but that you also go to the meeting and put it down as continuing education if you do go, because it's just that. You'll learn more than you ever could dream of. So there's a discount. The hotel cutoff date for the discount that USDA provides is April 6th. All right, so there we are. There's one opportunity to see our smiling mugs. Nate Lewis, Senior Crops and Livestock Specialist. Our contact information, phone numbers, email, again, the link to the surveys. We have about 8 minutes, so we could, Kelly, if you want to open it up for some questions, we have some time to do that.
Great. There are a couple of questions that have come in, so I will just go ahead and read them, and then you and Nate can fight over who gets to answer. The first one is, how far back in the supply chain should we review this? And specifically, that's about ancillary substances. So how far back in the supply chain should we review this, our direct non-organic suppliers or their suppliers as well?
Right. The manufacturer that you're purchasing from, I would say one back, and I mean that's a great question to think about. You know how that would go all together. But if you are purchasing a dairy culture, for example, let's say you're purchasing it from Chris Hansen, you'd want to contact that company that you're purchasing it from, and you basically the product that you're buying, that specification sheet would be that exact ingredient that you're purchasing and any ancillaries that are put into that. So that is the place to start, and I'm going to leave, just to try not to complicate matters, I'm going to leave it at one back. But if you have specific examples as you're looking at this and you want to call me up and show me just what you're thinking, I would really appreciate that, because without thinking and talking out aloud, I'm imagining some scenarios that could exist with some natural flavors and some other products on the national list where there might be a multi-layered situation. So I would invite you to call me directly so we can investigate that. But the quick answer is one back. It's the manufacturer that you're buying, the manufacturer of the ingredient that you're purchasing that you see on the national list.
Great, thanks. Next question is, do you ask for the name of the person or company commenting on the materials? And if so, is that kept confidential?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. We aren't asking for the name specifically. If your company wants to provide direct comments, we provide an option to give us your email and we follow up with you afterwards. But the the name of the operation isn't requested as part of the survey, and it wouldn't be disclosed to NOSB, even if it were. We're trying to keep this to represent growers and handlers as a whole and what their feelings are about any particular substance.
Yeah, and it's confidential to us as well. We don't get to see who is weighing in on these surveys, so we get the information only.
Great. Another question. In providing a list of ancillary substances, do we also need to provide the functional class of the substance, such as emulsifier, carrier, preservative, etc.?
I think that will be helpful because that's how NOSB is dividing up their review of the ancillary substances, as they're trying to take it by functional group. So they may say, for example, you know, and again, this would have to be in a separate recommendation. This isn't something that they could do during the sunset, but they could for their review purposes in the recommendation and what they pass along to NOP, they could say for microorganisms, and this is part of the recommendation actually for microorganisms, that operators must use organic ancillary substances when they're available. That's across the board, but they could have said organic substrate, or they could say that all stabilizers must be non-synthetic. So that's how they're trying to deal with them as best as possible in terms of putting any, when they get to, or if they get to wanting to place specific restrictions on ancillary substances, they will try to deal with them by functional groups. So if you just submit the ancillary substance, either I would try to put them into their functional group, or NOSB would when they receive all of that information. So it's just helpful to do that up front if you can.
Great. And the only other question I see is, is this PowerPoint available on OTA's website? And it will be.
Excellent.
We'll also circulate the presentation to everyone on the call today, and we can pass along information to anyone else who wasn't able to make it, or anyone who you think should have it.
Excellent. So, and again, if you know of anybody that you think should be filling out this survey, you know, we really, really want to get this distributed far and wide. So if you can think of organizations that could send this out to their membership, we're trying to think along those lines of, you know, just how we can get it out. If you have suggestions for us, let me know. Organizations that we may have not thought of to pass it along to, or if you want to pass the links along directly yourself, by all means, please do.
One final clarifying question just came in about the OTA summary on glycerin and it being referred to as a filter aid. Is that correct?
Glycerin or glycerides?
Glycerin.
Glycerin is a filtering aid. No, let me look at that. That must be in the materials that we put out?
It says in the OTA summary.
Okay. No, not as a filter aid. I would not categorize that as a filter aid, so that's going to be a typo. Let me take a look at that.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarifying question.
Well, thank you for alerting that to me. Yeah, I'll make sure and take a look at that and correct that. Not aware of that. Great. Any other questions? Please, I've got another few seconds here. Again, though, Nate and I are available. We're just waiting, really, for you to contact us. So please do. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Appreciate everybody taking an hour out of your busy schedule. And we hope to do more of these types of webinars as we move along for proposed rules and various issues. So let us know if this is helpful, and really would appreciate your feedback as well in terms of how our webinars could be improved. All right, well, with that, Thanks, and to be continued.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.